Are you looking for the best MIG welders under $1,000? In this video, we will look at some of the 4 best MIG welders on the market. Before we get started with our video, we have included links in the description, so make sure you check those out to see which one is in your budget range. Starting at number 1. Hobart 500559 Handler 140 MIG Welder 115V. The Hobart 500559 Handler is my first love. By giving me easy access to the world of welding, Hobart's 140 Marvel molded me into the welder I am today. The first thing you should know about Hobart is it supports both gas-powered welding, GMAW, and cord-powered welding, FCAW. I started out with cord-powered welding because it made less sense to thin my wallet out even more for a gas cylinder. Although in the FCAW setting, the wire was in a hurry to dry out, the results were up to the mark as I expected. Although I was scared to invest close to $1,000 for my first purchase, I was more than satisfied with the performance. When I got the machine, I opened it to check if everything's in order. To my surprise, I found a chart right under its hood. The list has all metrics down to the last detail. The sheet is also available in the manual, but it's rather inconvenient to walk around holding a paper all the time. Whenever I forgot what settings to choose for what surface, just open the hood, and voila! Tweaking the setting became less terrifying, as the sheet was a silent mentor. Besides, the beads I got from the machine were crisp and clean. I would also come out and say that getting all the juice out of this product is difficult. For instance, I had trouble working with 24-gauge metal. The arc was too powerful and was slicing through the surface like paper. However, a 0.5-inch gap between the material did the trick for me, so I was able to get the full performance. I also tried out 1/4 steel to see how it holds up. Turns out, the results were okay-ish, the beads were a little feeble for my liking. The best thickness range for Hobart 500559 is 1/8. I saw the machine in all its glory while working with 1/8 steel. And I have no qualms about it because most household projects don't need steels thicker than 1/8. The machine came to me as a ready-to-devour instant noodles. I've seen a lot of people get taken aback by this, as they can't get the machine kicking despite its ready-to-use feature. Let me clarify, the welder came with a cord-powered, FCAW, setting. So, you need to either use it like an FCAW welder, or change the wire, and call in the gas cylinder for a GMAW setting. After a few years of use, I was satisfied with this welder. However, I do think the manufacturer could have done a couple of things better. For instance, the ground clamp boasts of handling material 1 to 1.5 inches thick. In reality, while it does clamp 1-inch materials, there's no shot in hell for it to peg down a 1.5-incher. Also, the 20% duty cycle is a bummer, gives me 12 minutes of non-stop action out of 60. Still, as a scared newbie, the Hobart 500559 Handler helped me break my cocoon. At number 2. Lotos MIG 175 175 amp MIG Welder. While Hobart's performance was consistent, the price point is at the tip of $1,000. So, I wanted to see if I can cut some corners with money and still come out unscathed. After a few clicks here and a few videos there, I came across the Lotos MIG 175. And I'd be blunt in declaring that a deal so sweet is hard to come by. When I say deal, I mean the whole package that comes along with the machine. The product comes with a lot of nifty accessories, albeit not all of them are important. What caught my attention is the inclusion of a spool gun. I've seen spool guns sold separately at wallet-slashing prices. Here is a manufacturer giving it out for free. A curious development. I couldn't help but get intrigued. Now that I've used the Lotos MIG 175 for quite some time, I understand that their spool gun can't stand in the ring against the big boy spool guns. However, getting the accessory for free gives Lotos's spool gun a tinge of superiority despite the occasional performance issues. Plus, I had a seamless time working with aluminum for free, and that's a win in my book. Apart from the spool gun, the rest of the accessories are standard, that's all I have to say. Now, coming to the power of this machine, the MIG 175 does have more amperage than Hobart, 35 more to be precise. Initially, I assumed the natural outcome of having more current flow would be greater power, and that's true in some cases. I found the performance metrics to be nearly identical, with two exceptions. While my hobart machine could work much better with thin material, 24 gauge, the Lotus would give out at 18 gauge. However, I was able to force the machine to weld a 3/8 metal sheet, which is way beyond its pay grade. The only reason I pushed was that I thought, theoretically, more amperage backing up the machine has to mean better performance with thicker metals. I also found a chart under the welder's hood. The chart outlines all the settings I need to tweak before I go to town with the welder. It's another added benefit because I don't want to engage in a staring contest with the manual, which also has the chart, while I'm working. The biggest problem with Lotus's MIG 175 is that their consumables are almost exclusive. For instance, you couldn't use the spool pump in another welder even if you wanted to. So, that does not bode well for a professional who's prone to tinkering a lot. However, once I start weighing the features and expenses, I can easily declare this welder as one of the top MIG welders within budget. In my eyes, it's a top contender for the throne. At number 3. WeldPro 200 amp inverter multi-process welder. Going from brand to brand was getting a little tedious, so I decided it's time to go off-brand and see what lurks behind that curtain. Looking into a few welders, I stumbled upon 2020 WeldPro 200 amp, and it was a stumble of the ages, I must say. I've always been crazy about multi-purpose devices, and for a good reason as well. It amazes me to see neat little machines manhandling 2 or even 3 tasks at once. The WeldPro 200 amp is a similar 3-in-1 welder that has MIG, TIG, and stick welding. I found it at $700, and having 3 functions in one machine for such a cost seemed too good to be true. I was skeptical. However, after taking this welder for a spin, I realized I've never been so wrong. I started with stick welding, and the performance was satisfactory. The beads were more than what I'd expected. Afterwards, I began experimenting with MIG welding, and I'd say that's the strongest suite this welder. Finally came TIG welding, and not a shocker to me, but TIG welding was its weakest link. TIG welding is an intricate process, and this machine just doesn't live up to that. While tinkering with different welders, I saw a lot of safety features, but the VRD feature blew me out of water. The feature in all its entirety was so simple yet so elegant. If I leave the welder turned on for a long time, the arc starts collecting voltage. Anybody suddenly pulling the arc's trigger can cause a voltage explosion of sorts. The VRD, by itself, halts the attacker before it gathers too much momentum. Furthermore, I found the dual voltage options to be another boon. Even in a home 110V setting, I was able to get the machine up and running, but the low voltage does force the machine to hold back considerably. So, 220V will be the choice for heavy-duty welding. I know what you're thinking. And I admit, I am a fanboy of the WeldPro 200, and for a good reason. I wasn't a fan when I bought the product, I was just curious. My mind was racing to understand how a meager 30-pound welder can boast of having 3 weld options. I was surprised, shocked as I explored, to see the beauty of this welder. Anyways, I should remain forthright and inform duly that the TIG welding is nothing more than a toy. Yes, it's that bad. But still, I keep fanboying over the fact that it gave me 3 different welding options at such an unbelievable price point. As a beginner, I could experiment away without having to buy 3 separate welders. At number 4. Lincoln Electric K2185-1 Handy MIG Welder. It took me a little while to break myself off from the WeldPro dazzle. So, when I did break free, I continued my adventure through the rabbit hole. I halted at the tiny Lincoln K2185-1, throwing caution to the winds as I wondered whether this device, with such a compact construction, could never stand toe-to-toe with any good welder out there. So, I got the K2185-1, and my previous notions of disregard started falling apart. Firstly, this is really cheap for what it does. I would have added super, but I'll save it for later. You'll be hard put to find anything that lasts within a budget of $400. While the welder says it's compatible with 24 gauge, I found it a little lacking. But with 23 or 22 gauge materials, the performance was up to mark. One can work with 24 gauge, as I did, but their welding game has to be spot on. If you haven't guessed already, let me tell you, this welder weighs around 26 pounds only, which is why it got my attention. I could carry it around, pretending to have an oversized handbag. It came in real handy when I had to travel to my friend's cottage to get some welding done. While a lot of users have mixed options about this welder, I didn't find anything to be a major deal breaker. I think most complaints revolve around the machine's inability to handle anything thicker than 1/8 inch. However, I think such expectations from a machine of this price range is like asking a baby to knock out a full-blown adult. I admit, compared to other welders, it is a baby, and judging by its performance and amperage, that was the whole point of this product. So, if heavy lifting is on the menu, best leave Lincoln's K2185-1 out of the party. Also, the machine came with both MIG wire and flux core wire, one set. So, it was prepared for battle right out of the box. The GMAW MIG wire setting has better performance than the FCAW flux core. For some reason, the flux core wires seem too willing to run to their demise. My recommendation would be to get a gas cylinder for MIG. One could take chances with flux core wires. I don't think it's worth the consumables. Despite me defending this welder for less than optimal performance, its duty cycle bums me out. The interruption that follows a 20% duty cycle is a mood killer. I know that 30% would mean 3 minutes, a minute extra, but the extra 60 seconds gives me butterflies. Still, I don't hold it against the K2185-1. I think the little dude dishes out enough oomph for beginners to take advantage of. I wouldn't call it the top MIG welder under 1000, but the price to performance ratio does make it a worthy challenger.